Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title has come, No Actor in the Moment of Action. And I thought about shining light in some sense on shining a light on the inner realms and what are some uses. What do we do with this inner realm that we have? What do we do with imagination? What do we do with all our memories and where visualization happens? You know, what do we do with the inner environment? And so before we wonder about the action of something, it is very typical that you wonder about its nature. That means sometimes I look at people I meet for the first time, and I don't ask them, I don't judge them by their action. I judge them by their nature. You see, on some level, nobody can hide their energy when they express it. So, some people, you just see them, you see their will, you see it in the eyes of people. I don't know how many people look at people's eyes. I think most people don't try not to look into people's eyes. And I'm not saying like go and stare into people's eye, like grill them. I'm telling you that when you look at the eyes, you notice how the attention is being employed. You don't know how many times I have known movements before they occur by just looking at the eyes of the person. You can see so much from the eyes of a person, and not only from their eyes, how their attention evokes and sequences conception when they speak. I can instantly tell if someone is speaking, whether their inner realms are moving through image first or through language. I can tell. After a while of speaking to someone, I can tend to tell, what freedom they feel they have with their inner realms. Anyways, so I'm pretty much making this point that we gotta study the nature of something before we wonder about what can happen to it. What is it really before it moves? That's the question. So now to the title, No Actor in the Moment of Action. What could that mean? Could that mean Lao Tzu's Taoist view of action through inaction? Could that mean that the moment we actually physically move or speak, we are in some sense not an actor to ourselves anymore? Could it be that when we are active, when we physically move, our inner realms are becoming real, so there's no reason for them? It's like having the desire to say something, but after you've said it, the desire doesn't exist. And it's kind of like having this desire for a certain subjective actor that leads to an action, but the moment you reach that subjective actor in some sense, the moment the desire is reached, it leaves, it evaporates. So there are some desires that are long-term. For example, enlightenment, heaven, success, these are long-term to some degree desires. The person is desiring something about how they want to envision the long-term condition. So what does that mean? That means it's pretty much similar for businessmen too. They have to look at their business in the short term, what do they call it? What was it called? Short run and long run. They got to pretty much look at their business in the life cycle of their business, and pretty much it's kind of interesting. Businesses to me appear like people who are trying to know where they should stand in a market. That means a business has to move around. The business model has to adjust to the climate of the market, to the climate of the environment, you know? I feel that many moments in my life, I'll give you an example that comes straight to my mind when I was in 2010. 2010, I was graduating from high school in Canada, and I was a striker. I was a soccer player, football player, soccer player, and I remember this one moment where our team, I scored the first goal of the team, and it was this strange moment where somebody, what's the term for it, crossed the ball, and it was the first time in my life I completed a header, and I scored a header from a very short angle, from a very sharp angle. I scored the goal, right? And it was that moment where I just remember that instant. I have the memory vivid, the sun, the shadow, the metal of the fence, the plastic grass, the goal, and me jumping, and even the sensation of being in the air. That's very vivid in my memory. And then that moment where there's the ball hits my head, my eyes millisecond close, and as they open, I just see the ball go in the net, and then this cheering from, what do you call it? From like the people in the crowds. And in that moment, I was not an actor. I was a witness. So it's kind of like you are an actor in this life. You go do the action, then you witness. And it's pretty much the rise and fall of being this sense of a doership, and then suddenly come to a state of witnessing. So the effect is a state of being. The cause is a state of doing. So I feel that in some sense the Big Bang, there's a suggestion of what started, what ignited, what lighter lit that cigarette. You know what I mean? Like what what sparked the Big Bang? Where did the push come from? And in that tiny second of cosmic inflation, where did the design of the galaxies come from? That time after cosmic inflation, the Big Bang. So I'm telling you, it's kind of, and for a long time I was like, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Then I realized what the issue is, why the cosmological argument. I mean, guys, I'm not saying the Big Bang doesn't make sense. I'm saying the Big Bang is a theory, and it, in some sense, works. It's a workable, it's something that we can accept as valid for now, but I am personally looking at it in the sense that I feel we are not just, everything is not just happening in one dimension. We are a foolish species if we think that what we see is the only thing that's in this world. We are very foolish if we do that. This is why I'm constantly telling people in these talks, don't be afraid of the unknown. The unknown is the privilege of life. It's where the greatest questions come and find you. When you find yourself in a moment where you're simple and you can feel your being. Guys, there's something, I don't know how many people have felt this, but this is, in my personal life, it has been what has intuitively balanced me anytime I've been going off. And it is as if this is the sentence: keep your decency in sight. Be in the sight of your own decency as a being. Let me tell you, because the sacrifice of entertainment for efficiency is not worth it. That's the biggest reason. That means after some point, you'll be like every human being is playing a game. Even that bird building a nest seems to be playing some sort of game. Creatures in this world interact with the world. This is very common. So you as a human being, you are a temporary opportunity. I feel there is a dimension that is moving faster than another dimension, and between the communication of these two dimensions, the forces of existence are apparent. And I don't know if I am writing, if I am, sometimes you never know. You feel like you're paddling a small boat, then suddenly you realize it was a ship in the future. And sometimes you feel you're on a ship and suddenly you see you're left in unknown waters. Many times in my life, my mind, it's strange. There's been times where when I felt I had sinned to myself, when I use the word sin, I mean mistake. Sometimes when I felt Like any time in my life I've made a mistake, I felt heavier. I felt less authorized. Because in some level we are emotional. We as children learn an emotional language. Now, cultures that are very disciplined and very strict in behavioral context, they take away that emotional language from the child. That means, I'll give you an example. For example, I'm not like I experienced living in Iran for a few years. And during those years, I can tell you that in my youth, like during the age of 8, 7, when I came to Vancouver, during that time, it was as if every child starts off at free choice. I'm not joking. Children don't know enough to limit their own options. So from this state of everything is okay, it felt like, I don't know, in my youth, I felt I was pushed to a social, artificial act. And what I mean by that is like my attention would go to something else. It's, you know what it is? It's like a child kind of, it's like being at a temple or at a church or at some sort of event and then suddenly thinking of ice cream in the middle of the event. You see, the child doesn't feel thinking about ice cream is bad. Do you know? It is only through the stories that the child is fed and emotionally accepts that reality becomes jaded. You see, on some level, you can't be an individual in this life and not experience force. And force means, very basic definition, is a push or a pull. What does that mean? That means you are in a universe of not just an elemental sense of forces. You're in a universe where you are a force. Did you know that? Your conscious mind is a direction giver. And most people feel they can't decide. Most people, they rather see something than empty than make a decision. You won't know something that was missing in my life. I felt, how is it that there's so many people? In my youth, I would look up to the world and I would be like, how is it that so many people are so advanced, so strong, so their characters are so solid, as if the person is a character, not wanting to be a character. The youth, from youth to, after some point, you just ground in yourself. After some point in this life, regardless of what has happened to you, what you are, what you have been left with, you just realize there's nothing else. There's two options. Either you accept what is, or in some sense you endlessly try to deviate from what is, not realizing what is there. So that means it's like we can talk about, I'm a this color soul, that color soul, that kind of soul. I'm this kind of spirit. I'm that kind of spirit. I had that many past lives, that many future lives. I'm in contact with a interdimensional being. I am an interdimensional being. Oh my God, the world is an interdimensional being. Everyone is energy. Do you see how many ways our minds have moved? After some point in this ocean, your hand will find something it can hold on to. The vision. There's this hilarious. It's a joke. it's actually an Iranian, it's a joke. It's a joke I heard in Iran. Okay, but it has a strange, for me, a metaphysical value, a metaphysical moral to the story. So it's this joke. Okay, this guy goes to this person. They're outside, just like friends, and the guy's like, "Hey man, what would you do if you were in the middle of the ocean and you saw a shark?" And the person's thinking. And then the person suddenly freaks out and he's like, "A shark? I'm gonna climb a tree." And his friend looks at him with like, bro, are you serious? I'm asking you, what would you do if you were in the middle of an ocean? And if you were in the middle of the ocean and you saw a shark, you're telling me you would climb a tree? And then the guy turns around and says, don't you get it? I have no choice. I have no choice. And that's the end. That's the end of the joke. It's a silly thing that the person was rooted in a belief of the condition without even seeing the condition properly. That means after some point in life, it's a cool thing to do. It happened to me personally. There was a moment where I was just like, wait a minute. I was like, wait a minute. Could there be 0.0, whatever amount of zeros, 1% chance that what I feel I am seeing is not what I'm seeing? And that question struck a chord like a guitar player unleashing, the next wave on stage. It was like, I don't know how to tell you. This world of ours is it is pretty much like this. There's an unknown side to the coin, and there's a known side to the coin. This coin is flipping. There's endless change. But now there is a simple way of accessing the known and a simple way of accessing the unknown. And there's this complex way of accessing the known and accessing the unknown. Now the complex way of accessing the unknown is the infinitization, if I can say that. It's when our right now what we think is thought, it's actually not a thought. It's an image. And it's a two-sided evoked image. People don't realize this. That means the moment somebody says apple, that's like a domino effect in behind your eyes. It's many things evoke. Sometimes I feel it's like this. I feel like, imagine a long rectangular giant room. And imagine from the beginning of your life, every experience you had is like a furniture. And imagine as you're going through life experiencing, all this furniture is being set from the back of the room in a row, and it's all filling up. So it's like, let's say after 28 years of life, you are like 28 meters from the back of the room, and all the furniture there were all the memories you had. I'm saying now the unconscious mind appears like from one moment, from one part of the room, we take a candle, we take a lantern, or a flashlight, a spotlight, and project the spotlight towards the end of the room. You will automatically see memories are blocking other memories. Did you know that? Did you know the classification of your memories can block your archetypes? That means you could have been a great dancer, then somebody came and shouted something at you, and so that memory of you greatly dancing was covered, like literally layered with snow, of a memory of someone telling you, you can't dance, And imagine that person was nobody. Like, no, that person had no idea. What's more important is a person can discern in an instant if a person is communicating to them or they are communicating for themselves. You know what that means, guys? That means in this life, you don't just have a karma, the human beings of now, of this modern age, you don't just have an objective karma. It's not just cause and effect on a physical level. It's cause and effect on also a subjective level where you have an ability to cause a sound in accordance to an image from your inner realms, and another human being can hear that sound, and there can be a sort of relaying of not the same exact image as you, the speaker, had, but in some sense, a similar pattern. So you know what it's kind of like? Speaking is like trying to draw what's going on behind your eyes with words. Treat speech like art, and you will be fascinated. You will be fascinated. Just like how ink can be, just like ink falls on an empty page. Where do you think these sounds I'm making are? It's the emptiness of the cosmos. That's the simple unknown, emptiness. So pretty much, guys, when we do an action, I feel it is an inseparability of the actor and the cause of the action, which is the actor, and the effect of the action, which is what is acted out. So I feel when I say these words right now, there is an instantaneity unless I ground myself to the silence before I talk. Something I do, guys, before I speak. I mean, anybody who's a speaker in this world, I would recommend this to you. Become comfortable with the silence. Accept and honor the silence, then begin speaking. I am telling you that I think that is how we were meant to speak. We were meant to, I think in ancient times, rhetoric evolutionary was fueled out of this idea that man did not just speak to man, but man spoke to the gods. But as history moved on, we recognized the gods are less and less behind the clouds and more behind our eyes. So when we came to see this, and when Carl Jung, this psychologist, he in some sense, I believe Carl Jung was after Friedrich Nietzsche, of course. I don't know if they were, I think they were separated by like 50 years or something. Guys, let me check this. Somebody must have asked this question online. Okay, check this out. So, Jung was born, when was Carl Jung? 1875. He was born 1875, 1961, he completed his work. 1961. Sorry guys, I'm just checking something. I want to see, yeah. So 1900s. 19, yeah, 60 years, guys. Their deaths were 60 years apart. So maybe Carl Jung was he was definitely being the counterculture to the Nietzschean hype of how Nietzsche kind of declared God is dead and man killed him. So in some sense, Carl Jung was that guy in history who, after people realized God was behind man's eyes, Carl Jung was wondering why. And he came to this notion that the mind is in some sense kind of a part of the forest, and the majority of the forest of the mind is unknown. So for me, like sometimes in these talks, maybe it shows, but sometimes if it doesn't, I wonder about what is the never before seen. Like, doesn't that fascinate you? What would excite you? Like, you can be in whatever state of mind, but if suddenly somebody ran inside and it's like, yo, there's a spaceship outside, you definitely go to see it. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't be like, I don't have time for that. I gotta update my social media. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, even from a social media perspective, it's good social media footage. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, there was a question about how we are a character in the story of the world. The story of the world, in regards to the setting, of course, it's sensory and objective. So without my body, I consider without my physical body, there is literally nothing to be something. So in some sense, the body is required for feeling like you are something. You know, the word thing is many philosophers have battled about what it really means to be a thing. Excuse me. Guys, pretty much, Carl Jung was said, this is a pattern you see in history in all education. A bunch of people declare it's known. Then there comes the counterculture. What if it's unknown? Then there comes the counterculture. The fruition of that counterculture, it's completely unknown. Then comes the counterculture. What if it's known? You know? So I am telling you, all knowledge, all linguistic, language-oriented, story-based senses of knowing, it has literally been oscillating between the known and the unknown, and nobody 100% knows and nobody 100% doesn't know. Do you know? Because we exist as part of the system. It's kind of like your cell is being a part of your body, but your blood cell in your vein may not be able to comprehend why you go to work. So Carl Jung, you can say, was trying to be like that blood cell, wondering why the whole body's there, right? That means there was this interesting thought that made me kind of let go of the importance of the theist and atheist wars. It was just, after some point, it was this idea, I think it came from Voltaire, that Voltaire's had this quote, I don't remember it exactly, but it was something like, if there was no concept of God, it would be necessary to create it. Something like that. And Voltaire is this French atheist and like kind of next level intellectual. And the explanation for why Voltaire said that was because if imagine a world where there was no concept of God, we would react to the counter. We would go towards the counterculture. This is why, on some level, people talking about truth in the past is good comedy for the future. This has been the pattern. Comedians now on TV, they're all, letting go of their religions publicly. And so for me, it's not about keeping religion, letting it go. On some level, all language to me appears as nature's artwork. What do you want to do? You can choose to put a box on your head, a linguistic box, or you cannot. That means imagine you're walking somewhere. Imagine somebody comes and tells you, hey man, you can't stand in the sidewalk. You're standing in the sidewalk. There's no reason. And then you can say the inferior mind will be like, no, a new instruction came in my vicinity of awareness. The person's saying I can't stand. So the person just doesn't stand. But there's some people where that guy comes in and says, you can't stand here. And the guy says, who says? You see, you counter, you respond. You counter. Do you see? That's the whole thing about communication even. That language and communication and the realness of who you are pours out when you don't fear the moment. That's when your actual intelligence comes. Most people are caught behind the veil of fear, and this doesn't mean there is no fear. Don't think that you'll never have fear. The whole idea is that you have fear, but it doesn't stay. That means just because you touch something and you were afraid of fire, you touched it, your hand burned, doesn't mean you never touch fire again. Or never, just because let's say you opened the tap water and your hand burnt and it was hot water from the tap, you'd be like, no, I'm never touching a tap again. It's dangerous. No, do you see? It's like there is no such thing as failure. Another way to define failure would be initial contact. That's it. That means I've never considered failure more than just okay, I went and tried something, that's how far I went. It's like you try to climb a mountain, you climb a little bit, and then you fall. And as you're falling, you're getting the realization of how much is left. You're getting updates. You see, human beings should immediately focus their attention. I will tell you this, guys. I will tell you what I feel is the secret of real abundance. Where you wonder not how the world sees you as in people. You wonder how the world sees you. And because I personally have considered that this world is alive, it's not just us. Life is not just in matter, it is also in space. It's present in space. That means I could tell you the moment someone does anything in an instantaneous way, there can be no ego. The ego is being fulfilled. The ego was a cup, you fill it to the brim, then you raise it to the air and you're like, cheers. And you drink it in its application towards the moment. Human beings have always been wondering about the structure of sand castles. It is pretty much the game we have, That means everything here right now I'm seeing. Sometimes I ask myself, what is the real value of life? And I think about it, I just wherever I am, especially it's sometimes I would recommend people to listen to my talks when they're walking outside, Because when I started giving them, that's what I was doing. I started the talk, one of some of the early ones, and I was just walking. And as I would walk, you cannot ignore the world. The voice of the world finds its way towards your inner realms. So I want to share this view that 3 possibilities, and I don't care about all the other classifications after these 3 modes. Known, known and unknown, unknown. When you look at life in these three ways, any moment you go, you can suddenly get a feeling. What do I know about this moment? Any environment I go that it's unknown to me, I instantly familiarize myself with it. And what I mean by that is, for example, like, I'll give you an example. There was this party I was in. I was young. I was like, again, this was when I was in Iran in my youth, and there was this giant family gathering, and everybody's like, not dressed in tuxedo level, but like, dressed formal. And we all go there, and it's this incredible, it's this big giant house with, like, what do you call it? The person was showing off giant vases. Like, I had never seen vases that size, as like kind of just like, instead, it's like some people have statues in their house, some people have giant vases. And so I remember we go there and we're all sitting down. And so in Eastern cultures, tea is more common than coffee, you know? So it was a situation where people were sitting there, and it was like, maybe like you could say like 50 people in this large living room, giant living room of this person where, like, like everybody was invited to this person's house pretty much. Like, we were all the guests. And so I remember sitting there, and it's like, this is what I'm talking about, suddenly going into an unknown environment and making it known. I was sitting there, and I was just looking, and I was like, as a young kid, at like, I don't know, like 7, like young, like I was really young, right? And when I was there, it was a situation uh, where I was just looking around, and then it's like, out of my boredom of sitting on this chair in this kind of party where, I was too young to psychologically engage, I was in some sense kind of like just looking around, and suddenly in one of the glasses of tea, I noticed lipstick. So they brought fresh tea out from like the kitchen, and it had, for example, lipstick on it. So that means the guy, like, they would give tea out to people, and they would bring back the empty cups of tea, and some guy would wash them, and then they would give it back. So I see this lipstick, and I'm like, what the like, it was like, it was one of those moments where, like, what? And so I go, and that's what I mean. The environment, I literally get off the chair and I go in the behind the scenes of the kitchen, right? And I see that it's hilarious that outside of the kitchen, there's this giant party of people sitting with suits. Inside the kitchen, it is not like, it's like a totally different room of a different class. And I remember I saw there was this old man, and it was kind of like, at that age, I was too young to notice. I thought I was doing the justice by like confronting this guy, but later on, I was like, when I grew up, I was like, what the fuck is I doing? Like, but it was on some level, it was this, that I pretty much, like, I go there and I see this old man is literally, he's zoned out, staring at the water of the tap, and he's washing these cups, as if in some sense a numbness, do you know? Human beings just don't need food, guys. They also need honor. And what does that mean? That means the health of the human being shifts, becomes healthier when other human beings acknowledge that human being. It's just tribally built in us, When the tribe saw you, when you were around the tribe, you felt safe. Right? So the more people feel isolated in this world, it's weird, because they're designed to feel safe around the tribe, even, and they're in a tribe, but they don't feel that safety. So it's like reprogramming isolation. Like any person choosing an isolated life is kind of like choosing to reprogram evolution, from its tribal intent, So anyways, I go there and I see this guy doesn't care. He doesn't care to wash these cups. He's pretty much just like rinsing them, and the thing he's using doesn't even have, what do you call it, like dishwashing liquid and whatever, Doesn't have like soap or whatever. So, and I remember in that moment, it was a situation where I literally asked, and guys, I realized like there was also an opportunity for the people who would take the teas out to people to choose to take that cup out, but they wouldn't, you know? So anyways, I pretty much, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what happens. I think like I tell the guy, "Can you clean these?" The guy says okay, but the something's off. At the end of it, like it's one of the instead of this 50-year-old guy washing the dishes, one of the women was in the kitchen. The main servants of that guy's household we were invited in was there. So I asked one of them to kind of start cleaning the dishes and whatever, cleaning the cups of tea. But I'm telling you, it was pretty much first initial response to the environment, unknown, or like I'm bored, I know everything. Then suddenly I notice something that's unfamiliar. I notice a pattern that is not familiar, that seems new. And then I wonder why that pattern is there. And as I wonder why that pattern is there, it's like there's a level of just sincere walking. One of the most important abilities you need to develop as a human being is to continue in this life. That's it. It's like an ability. Some people have it. Some people, they get hit and they just get up and they continue. And you're like, whoa, like, so that's the thing. That's the thing, that the inner realms are standing stronger than the outer realms. But strong doesn't mean power. Those people who think strong means power, that power is self-destructive. Literally, it's like power is not meant to be held, guys. Power is meant to be directed. It is not meant to be held. That means any human being who gets too much power, then after some point they will, unless, I mean, this was something that I thought about Alan Watts, and how, in some sense, this man was one of the most incredible orators, one of the most incredible speakers I've ever heard in my life. But at the end of his life, this man evidently, he became sort of angry and was drinking all the time and was chaotic. So I wondered, what was it that when it was as if he felt he didn't deserve uh you know what it is? Let me tell you what it feels like. I think anybody is at a cost of experiencing this. When you simplify things too much, after a point there is nothing to do. And when you realize there's nothing to do, but your biological existence needs archetype, needs an ego. That means having an ego is not a problem, Having an ego and not realizing you have one is the problem. Do you see? There's nothing harmless about the ego. That just any person thinking that there's nothing wrong with that. Just thinking that you're only that is what's wrong with that. It's kind of like how Henry David Thoreau says, it's not what you're looking at that matters. It's what you see. It's what you see, and it's same thing with human beings, right? It's like whether you go into a good neighborhood or you're in a bad neighborhood, or whether you're in a good environment, in other environment. It's what you see that suggests the winning, the victory's footsteps. And of course, every generation brings with itself its own voice. That means here's the thing, guys. I'm just trying to speak about... Guys, my attention is also on the chat section. Welcome, everyone. If people want to engage, I'm accessible. Many moments in my life, I have not felt like an actor. I have felt like a witness of movement. There's been moments where there was once, I could say in my life, maybe I've had twice an existential panic attack. An existential panic attack is when the person emotionally cannot discriminate between what is existentially valuable and what is experientially valuable. And so there's a shock. It's as if the inner realms is like 1,000 times more intense than the outer realms, and suddenly you go into an existential panic. There was a time where in my inner realms things were moving so fast. There was literally so many, like, it was literally like I was seeing 6 films all meshed in together, you know? 6 film. Imagine you played 6 films at the same time, and in Photoshop you put each film at 50% opacity or whatever percentage opacity. Let's say you had 10 films, you put each one of them at 10% opaqueness, and you played them, okay? It would be as if 10 infused films. It was like such a movement in my inner realms where I was like, ooh, there's no point of, following that orca whale to the depth of the sea. You know, like it was that kind of an intense situation. For me, the voice of man is the divine factor. Pretty much people are a character in a story. You will experience a moment where you are the observer of all the objects and subjects that you have ever fathomed, conceived, and held. You will realize that the freedom of the inner realms are superior. They orient the outer realms. It's like that moment where Buddha was sitting by the tree, and in his inner realms, as it's written in, I think, the sutras, the story is legit. Buddha in his inner realms, he is getting deceived, and an army of dark arrows, all the chaotic archetypes, all the inefficient versions of himself, like I'm saying that, but pretty much it was arrows. He sees a bunch of arrows, dark arrows, be thrown at him, and in an instant of raising his hand, all those arrows become lotus flowers, and it is the state of not the self-aware being, but the aware of the self being. And Buddha, in some sense, he realized that he literally found his eyes behind his eyes. When you find those eyes, there is a freedom that comes with it. There is a freedom of non-ideological, it's not an ideological thing. It's like, strangely, it's like that night where you're looking outside of a window, late at night, or, outside of a balcony. I've had some nights like that where I was just looking down at a balcony, and it was night, and I could see the street lamp, and I could see the emptiness of the world, and that just how darkness had its own reality as well, And so, from the terrace, from the balcony of our mind, when we come down to the body, we're not the witness. It's like this. It's like your soul, imagine playfully, guys, Mr.Within is saying this. I know I'm speaking too casually here, but I feel I should. The soul is like, imagine there is something. Let's say there is a soul, Imagine there's a part of you that is a dimension beyond time that is journeying, or as the Buddhists would think, transmigrating soul. But the soul was suffering in form, so that when you are a shape in a changing world, you suffer. So Buddha had understood a shapeless component to his being that could not suffer, could not change, it's literally being before anything done. And when you notice that from your world, you get these strange goosebumps where, I don't know how to say it, it's like as if the important you have taken, as in this show, Shingeki no Kyojin, there's this commander, and this commander's wounded in the hospital, and then they realize these enemies they've been killing were actually humans before they were these monsters, right? And then one of the soldiers is like, "Are you telling me we've been killing human beings this whole time?" And then the Commander Erwin is on the bed, and he just kind of he's smiling. And then the soldier who's appalled looks at him and says, and his name's Levi, the soldier looks at Erwin and says, Erwin, what are you smiling about? And Erwin is smiling because he is such a deep thinker. He is such a deep thinker. Erwin Smith is like one of my, like above all the characters, is one of my favorite in the show. But anyways. So in that scene, Erwin smiles and says, because now we know something, we have taken one more step towards the truth. And that's what I'm trying to tell people, take one step towards and the importance of your experience and its directness of being. After some point, nobody has your eyes. Like right now, is your body the responsibility of others? You see, no, I move my body, right? So why should your mind be? Why should there be an external force changing an inner phenomena? What if their free will is an instantaneous, higher dimensional scope? Higher dimensional in the sense that emotions are denser ways of being. So I feel that when a human being glitches in one reality, that is in some sense the emotion. I feel emotions are where the inner realm and the outer realm are colliding. They are different times. Do you know? Because when you look at it, guys, most emotional moments, even in films, is when the guy suddenly at the end remembers something. You know? The lovers remember they loved each other. You know? The king remembers he was a king. The soldier remembers he was a soldier, you know? The good guy remembers he was always a good guy. Do you know what I mean? Like it's this constant becoming, this massive industry of our inner realms. I find it fascinating on some level. On like, oh man, you look at consumerism, they're selling garbage to people. But when you look at consumerism for the evolution of the psyche, the human being has to have something to do. Do you know? So it's like, even we have to consider that there will be a certain percentage of any system that like it's like a democracy is the majority's vote. But what about the vote of those others? Do you see what I'm saying? We're reaching an era where we have to master the ability of adding dimensions, no longer fighting dimensions. It's like that moment where you're trying to erase this whole sentence you wrote, this paragraph you wrote on a piece of paper. Then you're like, and the paragraph is like fresh in your mind and you want to just write it down quick. So that moment you're like, why am I erasing? Let me just go to a new page. And that's what I realized. That is the gift of man. It is the gift beyond hope. It is the gift beyond trust. It is the gift of perception in regards to, how can I say it? We become our own advancement. That means I feel it like this. I felt like there was a time I was really considering managing a company. Like before, like in 2011, I was trying to go like towards banking. Not banking, like becoming a financial advisor, you know, and eventually being around those people who were the big dogs, you know. So it was like that kind of situation. You know, there's some employees who can't wait to enter the company, and there's some employees who they enter the company, but it's as if they were never meant to be there. You know, it's like imagine like a very spiritual guy's boss, and the boss comes one day, and he's like, after a shamanic ceremony, the wind has told me I need to fire 2 of you, you know, and the wind told me, for example, 2 of you are doing this thing and that thing. And those 2 people are like shocked. And they could be shocked in 2 ways. One way the guy's right, the other way the guy's not right, and they're like, holy shit, this boss is like, you know, has no sense. Advancement, the most important word this world will ever hear. And then the next word after that would be civilization 2.0. I feel that everything can stretch. Everything can have a dimension added as long as there's a mind in the room. The mind's greatest advantage and the greatest inspiration for the mind is that it's unknown. So let me tell you how I feel human beings perhaps, probably, maybe, like in the future, they will perceive it like this. Right now, we think we are this physical, biological organism. Okay? And it's not wrong to think that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that we are a creature with incredible sophisticated tools, and these tools must be used, and guess what? The mind is one of those tools. So the person wants to get inspired. Imagine you're someone in the world right now, you don't have inspiration, you're like, what do we do? You would first locate your mortality. That is the first step. No human being can be independent unless they get a good look at what they are. Look at your mortality. Your mortality means that compared to all the animals on this planet, all the other species, what separates man from animals is that man is aware of his death. We are aware that the system ends. Many creatures in nature, they just exist as energetic kind of eco-programs, you know? As energetic programs of their ecosystem. The human being, once locating mortality, will be like, I get it. The system ends. It began and it ends. The leaves on the tree as the seasons pass falls. That means life has a beauty in how it arises. And civilization also has its beauty in how it falls. You know? Because in some sense it is an endless rise and fall. The human being's attention once you realize the sands of the hourglass falling, that shortens that literally gets rid of a lot of options of what the purpose of life is, and you realize you're an energetic expression throughout the day. And then you begin noticing that every day happens once. We haven't mastered time traveling technology yet, and I feel it's impossible, but at the same time, all right, let's say if it was, you kind of see, like, it's like, would you go back in the past to change something, or would you rather build something new that will change everything? So I'm kind of seeing it as just an opportunity. After some point, I'm like, what are people judging? Like, every person in my life that I've ever seen who's judged me, I was like, what are they judging? It's like, I don't even know how to judge myself. What are they judging? Do you know? And it was as if I recognized they're judging a bunch of cells. They're judging an organism. They're judging a creature that they don't have the eyes of. And the cruelty of man's judgment is so far. That means right now, it's like there's this saying that they say any animal that feels an emotion shouldn't be killed. It's a yogic saying or something from Vedanta, from the Vedic culture. And the reason is because a creature with emotion is aware. So you're intruding, it gets to see the fucked up shit you do to it, the animal. Do you see? So that's the issue. That's the issue. That in some sense, we should care for consciousness because we are conscious. If we have extended from the earth, technically shouldn't all the animals on this planet be our strange, deviated siblings? Technically, I feel it's like, what is the story then? If we evolve, then everything in every creature is like part of our evolution. And the question comes, how can you evolve without a world? That means if you don't see a new world, how could you see a new self? And there's two ways to see new worlds, either behind your eyes or in front of it. And in front of it, you gotta move. Behind your eyes, you gotta become still, ironically. Like in a reverse way, I mean. So welcome to the chat section, everyone. It's pretty much a free for all, the chat section. I decided to give it order, but now I'm like, all right, the chat section is like, a revolving door of a mall. I don't know, guys. For me, there came an importance in this recognition that the moment I move, I am the embodiment of my inner realms. Like right now, I'm visualizing myself picking up this cup of like iced tea in front of me, and I pick it up. See, literally, the moment my hand picked up the cup of iced tea, and the action was fulfilled, there was no actor. It's like the actor was fading as I came to do the action. That's what I'm saying. So I feel that we have to become multidimensional explorers of our own intelligence. We have to literally get a piece of paper and be like, okay, as a human being, what are the dimensions I see, both in my inner realms and outer realms? And hopefully, guys, if the winds of evolution find me in the future, I'm gonna try to, like, with whatever I make in this life, I'm gonna like open a school where we create libraries of people's journals of their inner realms and imagination. I was like, how dare we study reality and not imagination? Like, that's ridiculous. Because like it's like, really it's like, you know what it is? It's like science is like two people who've gone for a job interview, and the employer has come and seen both candidates in the same room, and science is like the first candidate saying, hey man, you want to talk to me? Forget this guy. this guy, like, do you see what I mean? I'm saying literally science, we have to, I don't want to say science like science is a movement, guys. Science is a method. It's a tool. It's a lens. Okay, all ideologies are lenses. When I say religion, like that's a religious lens. You look at the world, and you're like, oh, there's something up beyond the clouds, And then you look at science, oh, there's nothing beyond the clouds, And then you look at philosophy, there's so much unknown. What do we do? So guys, my attention has come to the chat section. Franny says, what's this game they play? It's my life. How many people have lost their lives to the game? How do we take it back from careless elites? So Franny, and then you say imagination creates reality. Yeah, they're codependent. It's like blaming one side of the coin for keeping the other side of the coin. I'm telling you, your inner realms and outer realms are like a coin. And I say poetically a flipping coin, because you're oscillating between them. There's moments you will feel, if you're literally doing inner work, like literally calculation, mathematics is like an inner work in your inner realms, right? So when you're working in your inner realms, literally you're gonna feel more like a mind moving bodies. You're like a mind moving numerical values in behind your eyes. So like that's a mind feeling like it's moving something. But when you open your eyes, in front of your eyes, your body moving something. I think that in some sense, it's not that the elites are careless, guys. It's that the system is unevolved. It's just unevolved. It's a fax machine civilization. Blame it. You can blame it on the elites. You can blame it on the people. It's both sided. You blame the elites, and the elites like it's your fault. You guys are all simple minded sheep, and we're like, what the hell, man? So we gotta. I'm telling you, it's life. Life is like a double-edged sword. You sometimes never know what image has another connection to. There has been, I'll give you an example. Like in my own writings, I just thought of the concept of work, and I thought about what would the great work be? What would the greatest work you can do on this world be? And I wrote this kind of book called The Great Work, okay? And then suddenly I realized in alchemy, that was somebody they talked about it, right? So it's honestly the importance. It's where you're putting your attention. That means you tell me, in deep sleep, are there any conspiracy theorists? Are there any conspiracies? Even the elite goes to bed, closes their eyes, and they sleep. Even the evil person has to sleep. Good and evil both have to sleep, suggesting that there's a human being before there is the imagery of the good and evil. We are human beings before we are characters in stories that we can endlessly break in our hands, So interesting. Franny, in the chat section, can you explain more about what you mean you tapped into your DNA? Does that mean you had an experience that changed your view on everything that technically would be a change in your DNA? A subtle change? Like, what do you mean? Ah, guys, I think I know what you mean. I think what you mean. I think I understand what Franny's saying in the chat section. So yeah, guys, this concept. I mean, I don't tend to bring the DNA into this because I feel like the medical sciences we gotta honor their use of the language. But at the same time, of course, it's a concept and subject that anybody can wonder about. So I would say that the DNA, I have heard that it's the book of life. It's like unique movement. So I would say that I feel that there are states of being that can potentially display a next level ability of the human being that we don't know. That means there could be a chance that all those yogis and all this, you know, back in the day, they got powers. They would call them siddhas, and when they used their powers, they would descend. They would go walk the path of ignorance. And those yogis that didn't use their powers, they abided by the divine will. They, in some sense, saw the truth. You know. So guys, I'm gonna share something interesting. So Ryan and Franny, I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna be the Diogenes to your Plato like argument. You know. Let me tell you, sure, you could say the DNA is untapped. We could be an antenna that may suddenly realize it can receive things unimaginable. We could totally increase, even let's say we connect computers to our mind, the antenna could become next level. Even they're talking about technology in the future that it's like there's no longer going to be any sort of forgetfulness because we're going to digitally compensate for that. So I'm telling you this. That I don't see it as per se the DNA. I feel that the DNA is in some sense evident in its effect, but not in its cause. So in trying to pinpoint how you behave in a certain way and that changes the DNA is a very complex challenge. Like I could literally see 10 imaginary philosophers debating me on this. You know, so I could tell you this, that I feel, sure, DNA is one path, but let's say if the DNA reached the stasis or the DNA was limited or something, okay? So now let's say where would we be left? We would be left in a situation where it is what is outside of us that can also change us, not what is inside of us that just changes us. Okay, and what is outside, in some sense, the way your inner realms change is primarily anything that happens to your body and anything that comes into like a 2-meter radius of you. Do you know? My view is that we're a fish in an ocean and space is not space, and there are currents just like how there's currents in the ocean, and when we tap into those currents, the state of mind can feel so dynamic that we may feel different, but we just got a peak of a dynamic state, which technically would mean a dimensional shift. So the speed you go in this life defines the dimensional density of it, right? Like it's like there's been rooms where I've entered in quick, and the way I entered in quick, everybody in the room was alarmed. You know, like I was speeding towards the room to not miss something the teacher was saying. And I ran, like I'm a really fast runner, and I ran so quick, and the way I came in the room, it like freaked out the teacher, you know? But I'm just telling you, you can have different speeds and you can direct it, and on some level you have to attempt the new if you want to see the mask on your face break. The mask of yesterday to break on your face. Guys, did you know that if you see an enemy, your enemies will be inexhaustible? Did you know if you fathom the concept that there is forces moving against you, your subconscious will be like, what do you want me to do with these applications you opened up, human being? And you can't do nothing, That means don't fear yourself towards extinction. Don't fear anything. This world is like us flying between the clouds. Remember this. Whoever you are, whatever you're going, this world can, like our minds are flying through the skies of matter. We are pilots. We are not belief systems. We're not ideas. We're not language. We are experiential pilots. It is the roars of the direct experience for the first time that man is realizing no object can be his face. No subject can be his face. So what is his face? The cosmic process awakens. Then you're taken. You're taken into your own sincere attention. Sometimes it's like if you want something so bad, it's as if you are chasing a butterfly that karma's going to be like, what are you doing chasing this butterfly? Karma's not going to let you get the butterfly. But if you go into a state of mind where butterflies land on your forehead, where you suddenly feel like a flower, you will see endless butterflies arise. You have to find your lotus nature. That lotus nature is literally you not exiling yourself from your inner child in the cruelty of what you have become. Every moment, just like the internet browser, you can refresh the browser. You can refresh the browser of your mind every day, guys. Why do you think they call it a mindset? Because you can set it. You set it in motion. And when we realize we're creatures of motion, we're creatures of attention, for the first time we will wonder about what it means experientially, what truth would mean in a dynamic, unconscious, collective process. So my vision is that it's not just man here. It's man plus everything. I don't know, it was this Tibetan sage, guys. I think his name was Sogyal Rinpoche. I think. But the quote was so incredible, it got kind of imprinted in my long-term memory. It's like, have you ever seen something so beautiful that you'll never forget? The situation is, I'm going to go a different direction here, but the situation is that eyes open in a system that is already moving. And whether you think people have a relationship with you, whether you think you have a relationship with people, whether you think you have a relationship with the world, whether you think people have a relationship with the world, it's at the end of the day, we are all walking through an event in history. We are literally the tip of the pen, the edge of the pen on the paper, the tip of the pen on the paper that is writing history. That is what being alive means. That you are not just a creature that can be looked down on. The only script left to be written now is that of an advanced civilization. For me, it was like, it's like, you can play with emptiness as much as you want, but then you will realize the candle every day burning a little bit, becoming shorter, and shorter. And as the forces of nature come to literally take the elemental form away from you, you are left with the mind that was there from the beginning. This is why the decency, I'm telling you, keep your decency in your proximity. Keep some sort of pillar of morality. You know what does that mean? That means be a Jedi with a lightsaber, not a Jedi without a lightsaber. have your morality, by your belt, I'm telling you, there's something about life that all the things that seem that they can only be done in complex ways can actually be done very simply in the future. That's it. Anything, if all the problems were like, oh no, what do we do? All these issues we have right now in civilization about identity, people feeling about what they are, like 10,000 years from now, what it's going to be like? It's like everybody's going to laugh. So the wise ones of now are those who are standing beside the future and they're like, yeah, I didn't say anything. Sometimes you got to communicate just because you can. That's the thing. You just want to see how something is like. No actor, the moment of action. Let me see what story I can tell you guys. The story of this thief. This thief, guys, he goes to the Zen master, and the thief says, Zen master, I'm a thief. I've gone to all these other people to try to stop myself from being a thief. How do I stop this? How do I do this? How do I stop stealing? And then the Zen master's like, the guy says to the Zen master, everyone's wanted to change me. And the guy's like, I don't want to change, but if you make me stop stealing. Like, that's kind of like the thing, the idea, right? The guy's like, okay, help me stop this, but I don't want, like, nobody can tell me, like, don't tell me what to do. Something like that, right? So this Zen guru is like, okay, this guy wants help, but doesn't want the help. So the Zen master, in some sense, looks at him, and the Zen master is very, very, very alert. And he looks at the man and he says, okay, I'm not going to change you. I'm not going to tell you to renounce and go become a monk or anything. He says, the next time you're about to steal something, before you steal it, just put it there and just look at it. Look at it for a little while, and then do whatever you want to do. Right? And so it was that situation where the next day, the guy, let's say somehow this guy, his name was like, even though it's a Zen story, but let's say the guy kind of was like the Japanese distant relative of Robin Hood or something. So this guy, the next day, he's gone to this palace, Assassin's Creed style, Prince of Persia style, what is it, RPG game style, and he kind of like, plays the right moves, and he goes into the palace and he opens the jewel box and he gets that diamond, kind of like Mission Impossible diamond or whatever, and right when he's about to take it and he sees nobody's in the room, he's been like kind of invisible the whole time. And so what he does is he just sits there in the palace room staring at the diamond, and he just looks at the diamond. He looks at the diamond, and then he just notices something, stands up, and just runs out of there. Just runs out of there. Now, I'm not going to tell you if he had it or not. I'm going to tell you what he comes and says to the Zen master. He comes to the Zen master, and he says, I want to be a student. And the guy says, why? And he says, because I did your teaching or whatever, and I looked at that rock, at that diamond, and I noticed it's just a rock. He just looked at the Zen master, he's like, holy shit, dude, my whole life I've been literally chasing after stuff. Do you know what I mean? I've been taking stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like he suddenly realized it was just a rock. He realized that diamond was just a rock. Really? It's like, what are you going to do with the rock? The best thing you can do with a diamond is just put it on your forehead before you sleep, What else can you do with the diamond? You know what I mean? I think the new age community is the last hope for the diamond industry. I'm joking, guys. Some people say diamonds are forever, So the thief pretty much realizes, like, holy shit, I've been chasing something meaningless, but in my inner realms, I thought that was valuable. So one day you're going to suddenly look at yourself and you're going to feel like Iron Man, and you're going to literally kind of like your mind's going to think to itself like as if you're talking to Jarvis. Like, to imagine how Tony Stark, like, let me tell you what Tony Stark was doing, guys. Tony Stark, this is pretty much every inventor, in some sense. How can I say it? Every inventor will fathom, like I personally in my childhood, I had, I don't know, youthful ambitions of invention. The inventor will eventually make a machine that will do the inventing. And the inventor, I think the great inventors, Tony Stark is like an archetype. You can, guys, I will tell you, it's like Stan Lee outdid himself. It is a dance of moments where you feel you're moving the world, and moments where you feel the world is moving you, and moments where it's 50-50. I said this from the beginning. All knowledge is like that. That means you could go and some professor can declare something very serious about something that's proven. Like, let's say some fact, some evidence or theory. Some professor can be like, we're certain, like really, really certain about this theory, And you're like, what do you mean? Really, really? Guys, I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. We're not creatures of thought. We're creatures of attention. Thoughts are like stuff in front of a camera moving, in front of our eyes moving. You are not per se just this stuff. You are the administration, the processing, and the advanced expression and reception of this. When you realize that you are gifted, not with a gift the world sees, with a gift that for many years you will open up the box and be like, what is this? And as you endure, then it's kind of, I remember the most I'll tell you the most motivational concept I've heard, like any time I've gone through a chaotic period or something intense. Like, this was the image, guys, that it is in the darkest hour of night where the bird, the blue jay that has flied so far, in some sense suddenly begins to feel that there is no hope, and then suddenly feels the warmth of the sun before the light of the sun. Did you know that? That the bird feels the warmth of the sun before the light comes. So in some sense, it's at the darkest hour hope arrives. Dawn arises. Right? And so that's pretty much like, if you were a caterpillar, that's your butterfly ambition, So, guys, I'm gonna respond to Rep Siler. Rep Siler brings up says an interesting point, guys, in the chat section. He says, in the beginning was thought. Now, I responded as no. And let me tell you why. Because for me, it's like you can't be a thought. You know why? Because it changes. Are you the same thought as you were yesterday? Do you have the same eyes as you had yesterday? Do you have the same physical body as you had 10 years ago? Do you know what I mean? So you see, everything is changing, and in a process of change, consciousness is this changeless viewer that's orienting direction in this change. I feel we are how in an onion style, a higher dimension is defining the limits of an outer dimension. So at most, in an intelligent manner, we will at most feel we are the thoughts of higher dimensions. I think that's where we will be led as a species into considering if we choose to entertain a personality in the unknown. That means if you think about it, any idea you think about that doesn't relate to a person, there's no concept of God or not. Like you don't look at a coffee cup and be like, does this coffee cup believe in God? No, do you see it doesn't relate. It relates to the archetype of the person. So God and man is kind of like, you can say a metaphor for how the body of man was his individual consciousness, and what this body saw was the collective consciousness, was the mind. So it's as if like that moment in the Sistine Chapel where I feel Michelangelo left the greatest secret of the Sistine Chapel. He left one of the greatest divine clues ever in history. And that divine clue was in the Sistine Chapel. Let me find the picture for you guys. So I want to direct the listener's attention to the wallpaper, and here's the picture I'm going to put. This is the picture. This is the picture we find in the Sistine Chapel in Italy. Okay? This is an incredible picture, and I have to keep zooming in. I mean, expanding it. All right. So guys, you don't like look at the space between man's hand and God's hand. Do you see? And you see how there is a curtain? You see how there is a curtain behind God? That means the angels are curtained from man's eyes. And so God is right there, and this guy technically doesn't see anything. Do you see? That means his hand is not even attempting to touch anything. His hand is just there. Do you see? His hand is just, look at his elbow. Like his elbow is on his knee. So his elbow's on his knee. That means this guy is just looking into empty space. Yeah, this guy's looking into empty space. But on another level, the higher dimensions are like a space away from man's finger. On the edge of man's finger, it seems to be where the divine is waiting. So let me say it like this. This was the idea I wanted to share about this. This is the clue that Michelangelo left. The space is the connector. Space is connecting this dimension and the higher. Space is the veil between man and God. The ultimate and the lesser, the fallen. So space, so actual space, it's as if like the person's like, wait a minute, what if it's not all empty space? What if space is not empty, but man's mind was? You see? I mean, I'm getting too excited about this, but I'm just saying, like, like that's the thing, space. When we experientially comprehend the space where we are being, we become for the first time what I would say not human beings. We have to give it a new name because this inner realms are being identified with. So we are like a subjective-objective creature. Or if you are a materialist, it would be an objective-subjective creature. I stand on the continental philosopher side, so I would say subject-object. I find that space, and when I say in these talks, accept the unknown, don't fear it. It's like the fear is a lesser mindset. You know what happens? There's some people who fear things, and there's some people who give freedom to the fear because they fear nothing. They in some sense don't. For them, it's like it doesn't matter if a leaf on the ground kind of moves and hits their shoe, like a dry leaf, the wind blows a dry leaf and the dry leaf hits the person's shoe, or if it's like the person fearing like extinction. Do you see, like it can become just like that intensity of the leaf. This angel and this last angel in the behind, like at the back of the picture, is like, yo, get me out of here. What's interesting is that the angels are carrying God. God is not flying like Superman in this picture. And you see this angel that sees, you see this angel that is looking. You see how God is trying to touch man's finger and that angel is looking behind his head. I feel that angel is probably Gabriel in the Christian context. Archangel Gabriel. Because Archangel Gabriel was in some sense the bearer of the message archetype, was the messenger, was the kind of mythic messenger. That means before FedEx, Archangel Michael was in some sense moving around. Archangel Gabriel was moving around Revelation, you know. So, anyways, guys, it's an incredible work of art. The fact that Michelangelo drew this on a ceiling deserves a slow hand clapped ad infinitum. We have to endlessly till the end of time slow hand clap for literally how much effort this man, and he was an old guy evidently at the time he drew this. All right, chat sections getting momentum. All right, let's see. So, guys, Franny says if you have innocence or some level of purity, you can recreate through your perception. Yeah, because you see, decency is a level before purity, I would say. Do you see? So, it's not innocence per se, it's abidance by your nature, I would say. That means it's like, don't forget how you naturally are. People don't breathe the same. So it is not natural for people to have ideological systems that are all the same. Do you know what I mean? So it's like when you notice that all the different unique components to your own existence, we are reaching a time where we don't have time anymore for, sexism, racism, all the isms. We don't have time. We don't have time to, in some sense, focus on the color of each other or our form. We are moving past that era. We are moving into the era of minds. Now the question is coming, what is consciousness? What is the conscious activity? Can we move our attention beyond the human framework? Can languages develop that in some sense are geometric, that in some sense man is subjectively moving at higher speeds? What if we, after so many years, it's inevitable, after some point some guy was like, I've had it, we have all this advanced technology, we're not going to plug our heads to it, and that guy, imagine, plugs his head to, in some sense, that kind of advanced technology. Then you will be experiencing a sort of neural perception. You would say the first time that a human being connects their brain to a computer and it works, that's going to be a moment where the eyes will be creating memories never possible. That's going to be destructive, guys. That means if there is a neural movement, we shouldn't connect our head to computers, because it would literally fry our brain. Not fry it in the way it's going to overwork so many neurons because of the vastness. It's going to literally be neural synapse explosions. So eventually we're going to, I think there's a huge chance that, like, you're a natural being, you have a natural stomach, right? So like you can't eat after some point, you get sick, right? You can't fill your stomach up. So I feel human beings, their understanding and perception of reality, the mind has a sort of parameter of what it can confront. So too much information will make us each want to leave the system, or if we have to become the system, we technically have to see our past self destroyed. So it's like that moment when you plug a human being's head to a computer and you're like, what is it? Is it a computer or is it a human being? You're like, which one is it? So it becomes a situation where if we choose to add a dimension to the brain physically, I don't know. Like, that's too soon for the civilization. So guys, I feel I've reached the end of the talk. Projective uses of the inner realm. Pretty much, guys, your inner realms are, you can say, your imagination is the extension of reality. What does that mean? That means right now I'm looking at this iced tea cup in front of me, and let's say I just imagine it's just hovering in the air suddenly, slowly. So that imagination of this iced tea cup hovering in the air is going to, in some sense, be it's like it's an extension of the actual coffee cup. Like, if you notice, imagination is happening in every person's private room. That means you could be in a room imagining something and the other person may not see it. This doesn't mean the brain doesn't give off waves and the person empathetically, emotionally may not feel it out. I feel that we must build a civilization that doesn't forget how we were animals first. That's the crucial thing. Everything can be played better. Look at the piano. Look at the piano. After Beethoven, how many people have come and played the piano and they have extracted melodies no one has ever thought? And I feel our hope for the species is like this, that we're all just trying and seeing what combinations we unlock experientially to be whatever in society. And after some point, as Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. So I feel the evolution of the individual consciousness is through service to its collective presence. I feel that we should have such a sophisticated concentration and attention as human beings that we should be prepared in the future to move at hyper-fast speeds, where it's going to, like, 200 miles per hour is going to feel like 50 miles per hour. We have to prepare for that, We want to be creatures that we are, like, believe it or not, it's kind of like, what's hilarious? It's like the irony to Castaway. The person came back, people found him. He lost Wilson, but he found civilization again. And then the person came on Earth and he's like, I'm back home with people and family and all this, And then the person suddenly says, wait a minute, oh no, the planet is an island. And we are on this island and we are creating our own fires of what is true and what isn't, and we are in some sense building tools. So I would say that life pretty much can appear as like a playground where your youthful vision upon the world is like open, or your more like warrior battlefield, all right, let's go handle the system kind of mentality, right? My grandfather left a story for the ears of me and my cousin that he, in some sense, I'll tell you this, in 2016, I visited Iran. My grandfather on my father's side passed away when I was 10 years old. And so I had very few memories of him, but I never knew him. That means it was like there was an important person in the household, but I never knew that person, right? So my grandfather existed in a few vague memories. So in 2016, I was around one of my older cousins, and I'm like, tell me memories you have of our grandpa, you know? Tell me one wisdom or story our grandpa like told you. And my cousin told me this story. That my grandfather, he was an industrial man, and he was a factory owner, believe it or not, in Iran. But in a very crucial factory that was making the highest quality gas pipes in Iran. So you see, like, the gas is moving in a lot of places around the world, and so the tubes, the industrial pipes for that, need to be high precision. So my grandfather was keeping a high quality of industrial pipes, so there is less explosions in the city, random explosions. Anyways, my grandfather, my cousin said that he would come home from after work, and he would say that when you come home, you are no longer at work. When you enter your home, when you take off your hat, you are literally a different human being. You're a family man. But when you put your hat on and you go outside, you know, the armies of the future march forth. Use it. So what I mean is that this army is not physical, it's just vision. It's that you have to go find your own masterpiece from the pieces of your sight. You have to care. I'm telling you, this is the simple solution to, I think, to a general karmic cube. Okay, what I mean by that is that, like a karmic Rubik's Cube, it's a puzzle. Some things in this life, they are not certain and they're not uncertain, so they go into the dimension of oscillation. So it's like duality. So find a mastery with space. Be a human being that in any moment, even right now you're listening to me, just for a second, just sit comfortably and just look around and be comfortable with space. Be comfortable with how your mind, how your awareness has a simultaneity with space. That's the zero dimension. Then confront everything in that space individually. Let your attention and mind, literally in whatever room or wherever you are seated, listening to me right now, let your attention, after acknowledging the space in the room, okay? Then you go on to, in some sense, wondering about the individual phenomena, so you get a micro awareness. So first there's an awareness to emptiness, then there is a micro association of, like, you're finding everything is individual. That means if you're sitting in your room, you're perhaps seeing everything. Like, let's say from your phone on the table, the wrinkle on the curtain, like everything. So I'm telling you this, that you acknowledge the space, you acknowledge the validity that it's okay. It's okay for people to be individuals. It's okay for the human being to be an individual. And it's also okay for all human beings to be individuals that change. All of this is okay. It was never not okay. It was always okay. We were just too savage to allow it to be common. We must care to introduce the world anew to itself. it's kind of like the person's like in the trenches of the space-time continuum in some elemental temporal display of a biological program, you know? And the person's like, okay, what do I do? And you realize that whatever you have fathomed as a person, whatever subject and object you have perceived, they are hovering in a beam of attention. Find the source of that beam and you will come to the attributeless witness. When you're in the attributeless witness, there is nothing to do. There is nothing to be, because there is no language to define a movement that is quicker and higher dimensionally faster than the language. We must step off the chair of the past. I'm telling you, it's like this. It's like, it's like this. This is civilization. Civilization is like a dinner table. The person is sitting at the dinner table. The person asks the person from across the dinner table to pass the salt. And as a salt, let's say it's civilization. All the people on the table are civilization. The person says, can you pass the salt? And imagine the person doesn't. He just doesn't pass the salt. Now, you are left in a situation where you have to get up from the chair, or you can endlessly negotiate with somebody to be your savior to pass you the salt. So you see, on some level, you have to choose to get up from a chair. Literally, people who have problems with their own past, practice getting up from a chair. Literally sit on a chair and get up from it and walk to somewhere else. That's the whole point. The point is not that things should happen or shouldn't happen. The idea is that it's a strange jungle-like setting of so many random patterns happening, so many waves colliding with one another. So after some point, it's like life is just happening. I am living a life while it's happening. So you are living a life inside a currents of life. So we are living as particles inside we are living as micro particles inside a macrocosmic process. There we go. So guys, I'm going to end the talk here and open it up to Q&A. If anybody has a question or comment, feel free to share. So this is the Q&A portion of the talk. Yeah, guys, I'm going to take a breather, but my attention's on the chat section. Anybody has a question, I'll get. So thanks for listening so far. I just feel like I just need to say QA, QA, QA. Okay. Okay, guys, so I noticed Franny technically is asking a question here. What if the service is in a system that's actually trying to kill life and you realize that you're serving the opposite of what you want for humanity? Listen, it's kind of like, the question is like, what do you do with bad guys? What do you do? Imagine you fight the bad guy and another bad guy comes. You're like, what is this, a video game? And then you defeat that bad guy, another bad guy comes. So you see, it's that human being that needs to update their vision. That means on some level, it's as if like, what are you going to do? When people get old, they want to be more solid to themselves, so they keep reminding themselves of their past, so they get into emotional loops of tyranny and self-repetition. So what I mean by that is like, what I mean by self-repetition there means like, it's like I saw my 80-year-old grandfather, and every time I see him, he constantly seems to, he's keeping his communication alive with a memory where he was very successful in his life. So when he speaks, he's speaking to you like a successful businessman, but he's this 80-year-old man living in Canada, in a lovely home. Like their own home, Persian culture, doesn't embrace kind of like senior homes that much, you know. It's like family is the issue is with family is that you can't betray family. So whatever you do in your life, you can't betray the truth someone else you care for sees. You know what I mean? Not that you can't betray. I'm just saying, like, I'm speaking about these things in a certain context. So, Franny, I would say that I remember I wrote this short story of this black sheep, and this black sheep suddenly opens its eyes and gets a vision. This black sheep in a slaughterhouse, walking to the sheep don't know they're walking to a slaughterhouse. The black sheep suddenly gets a vision and starts walking the other way, and suddenly notices all the other black sheeps in the herd join with this black sheep. You know, all the other black sheep, all the other beings who've questioned the system, they wonder about a different dimension of it. Pretty much that's it, right? So in the story, what it is you realize that life is an event. When you see it as an event, you don't fear it as a person that much. You know, it's just an event. Right? And it's an event that we're kind of like tourists in manifestation. Do we increase the quality, make it better, or do we reduce the quality? And I'm pretty sure even if there's a person who is, let's say you are the most evil, power-minded person in the world. Let's say, what are your options? You're like, all right, I will control this civilization, you know, like a video game. Yeah, that's my power. I will do this till the end of time. Like, you see, that guy can't. That person will get so bored and eventually be like, we need new video games, so we will invest back into the civilization. The Medici family in Italy, they were questionable kind of bankers in power, but they were smart because they cared for society. They allowed society to update and advance, not to become foolish. That means that those people in power who are trying to make the system worse, they are not smart enough to notice. You can get to see what it would be if it was better. Why are you making it worse? Why are you not realizing that if that child in Africa wasn't dying from poverty, like that child could have been the next Einstein? How many Einsteins is this inefficient civilization kind of losing? That's the tragedy. So you would see, even if you're a ruthless, power-hungry like person, you're going to be like, okay, at some point, I want to see a civilization that's way more advanced. Imagine you want to control civilization, so some person comes to you and says, all right, you want to control civilization, that's fine. Well, don't you want to control an advanced civilization? And then the power-hungry person's like, yeah, controlling advanced civilization. And the person will suddenly see that advanced civilization will open up so many new dimensions of games where billionaires are going to realize there's no point of sitting in an ivory tower. Human nature is the true wealth. How advanced human beings live and what they do. Imagine a world where you turned on the news and you were seeing just endless talents of children in the world unlocking. Do you see? We want to build a civilization at a higher speed, not a civilization that wants to return to the cave because it's too dark to see. You know what I mean? That's the situation. And Dylan Thomas is imagine like his father was on his deathbed. He said rage against the dying of the light. And that comment was not to his father; it was to civilization, because every plant has its destiny. You know, every bee has its spot in the hive. You know. So, anyways, let's see if there's any other questions. Rep Cycler says, "Where do we go from here?" 4 billion years of evolution, you have free will, so you can pilot. Depends on where you feel like going. If everyone is on a different rung of the same ladder. Yeah, we're all drops in the same river, you know. Franny says, why do I feel like when I fully wake up, I will be somewhere else or someone else? That's because, like an explanation, I don't want to say like this is just Mr. Within's view on it, but I would say what do you mean when you fully wake up? That means when you're semi-awake, you don't feel it? When I fully wake up, I will be somewhere else or someone else. Yeah, I don't know how you're using the word wake up. Do you mean sleep, or do you mean like wake up while you're awake? Do you mean like an enlightening awakening, or do you mean like an actual alarm clock awakening? Oh, okay, okay. So I would say, so interesting comments, guys. I would just say this. Here's the thing. I was like, I reached this puzzle, guys, this mystical puzzle, and Vedanta gave me an answer. And the answer was so simple that in some sense there is the conscious waking state, there is the dream state, and there is the deep sleep state. And these are the three states you experience in this lifetime of your mind. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, guys, don't fear the unknown. Let it be a mirror for how the mind is moving. You wake up. Sorry, guys, I never finished it. The Rebhu Gita says, what does it say? Says that those three states. There is a fourth state that is awake in all three of those states. So in Vedanta and yoga, they acknowledge a state of wakefulness that you are looking through the eyes of your being. So it doesn't matter if something's being done or not. You see everything. You're technically being sight at that point. So, sorry guys, the body is strangely like a vehicle that needs to be replenished, refueled. Oh my god. That's good, warm temperature iced tea. Alright, so Zen Seizure says, I feel like I'm living in fear of externals, but what if it's just me realizing how much I'm not whole? Like the fear is the whole, HOLE this time. So I don't know, by externals, I take it that you mean what you see in front of your eyes. So you're saying, I feel like I'm living in fear of what's in front of your eyes. But what if it's just me realizing how much I'm not whole, how much you're not complete? Like the fear is the whole. Let me tell you something. Socrates and Zen, I will just call you Zen. Guys, I'm talking to Zen. The spirit of Zen. like the concept. I'm joking, guys. Okay, okay. Let me give you a good attempt at the answer. Here's the thing. Socrates said the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. That means when you go to see what you notice there's way more stuff you don't know than you know. So you initially, just like how the person acknowledges the body in some sense kind of physically passes away, dissolves. Similarly, like it's also your, how would I say it? Your awareness is a certain like candle in a dark room with 8 billion other candles in this dark room. We're like 8 billion candles on a sphere in a vacuum, thinking about what is light. You know, what is consciousness? You know, we are an occurrence. We are part of the cosmos happening. Like, you know, that means technically, if extraterrestrials were watching from the skies, they would also be like tourists because I am part of this cosmos happening. You know what I mean? Like I'm an event of nature. So I would say, Zen, that ZS. Okay, let's just say Zen. Yeah, I mean there is. There's various views, guys. I mean, every person's inner realms are different. I mean, that's why we have different DNA. So it's okay to disagree, you know, but it's not okay to pull the curtains on future possibilities, you know. So I would say this, guys, there's really nothing to fear because there is, after, like you look at it in the beginning, before you were born, did you fear anything? No, you were fearless. It's like I was such a fearless warrior before I was born. It's a belief because the inner realms are included. So if I have to choose, Rep Siler in the chat section, you're telling me choose between is reincarnation a belief or a fact, but the way I'm choosing it is because it's a trick question. Like, let me tell you why. Because the moment I choose belief, the argument for belief is everything is a belief. Do you see? But not everything is a fact. So by choosing belief, there's more freedom for phenomena, you know? So that's what I would say. If you're asking me to choose, I don't know, maybe you're seeing this in a context where those two are possible options, I don't know. Maybe reincarnation is just, you know, you need to realize you have a new car now, drive on, you know? You know? All right. Anyways, guys. Oh, okay. I thought you're speaking like. Yo, that sounds like a rap album. Souls Don't Die. Oh man. Souls don't die, guys. I think if I ever wanted to manage be like an artist manager for like a rap crew, I would only accept a rap crew named Souls Don't Die. Oh man, this is too silly. Guys, Q&A is not the talk, okay? In the Q&A, I'm allowing myself, like, you know, relaxing on the chair a little bit. I don't know, guys. You see, we just have to we have to be playful with language because language is like a double-edged sword. It's coming across differently to every person's different eyes. So we have to find a common denominator. And I feel, here's the situation. When we go look in the past, we see all the reasons we're different. when we look in the future, we see all the reasons that we can, in some sense, develop some sort of advanced common language. What I want to see on this planet is not just people evolving. I want to see movements occurring. I want to see movements, but these movements are not violent. They are intelligent. It's as if suddenly the person said, I'm just creating a story here because I'm getting the vision for it, but it's like the inner vision for it, but you know, guys, the word soul, just to share it in regards to the comments section, soul, the word soul is like wondering what the unknown x variable of a mathematical equation, which can be given any value, is. Do you know what I mean? So Zen Seizure says, I seized the Zen. I've been struggling with assimilated knowledge, my own wisdom and other things. That was helpful. Thank you. Namaste. You know, Zen seizures, and actually, I think you should definitely write a book and call it that. But the seizure, the way when I saw your username, Zen seizure in the chat section, like, I thought literally it's like either a Zen master getting a seizure, or it's in some sense how every incarnation in the lifetime is a return to that Zen state, suddenly a seizure, or as you say it, you're seizing the Zen, so you're endlessly getting glimpses of the Zen state of mind. You know, I don't know, it could be seen in different ways. Yeah? But nice name, nice username, man. I'm telling you, my channel is like a lot of creative usernames are gravitating to it. The other day I was like, you know, chatting with someone named Being Human. Like you couldn't be any more human than that, you know what I mean? Oh man. Alright guys, you know, there's so many questions in the chat section, I don't know which one really to answer. Okay, I'll stick to the last. Do souls die? Do souls die? Let's try that. So death, the idea of the soul literally is an idea which was seen as something that is in the body, and death was an ejection out of the body in the view of a sort of transmigrating soul. Whether it's a physical body or the dimensional body. Nice question, guys. It's like, it's always fun when Thor's hammer accidentally falls on your table and you're like, Thor, get your shit together. Alright. you think this is the only life you have. One day, my father, a great man, a great mind, he asked me, do I believe in past lives? Like, he asked me like how I perceive that idea. Because he knew I was kind of like looking into meditation and all this. And I told my father that the reason I say I cannot know, because what I see in the observable universe right now is a tiny percentage, is maybe 12% of what I feel the unknown presence of my being is. So I'm telling you, after you move beyond the language threshold, your identification with the unknown, still there's an emotional threshold. I haven't talked much about this, but it's like, guys, sincerity, you go look up that word and whatever it means to you. Sincerity is when nature knows you're listening. So anyways, so I would say that I responded to my father and I said that if I considered past lives to 12% of what I actually am, technically none of those past lives would matter, because there's like that 88% missing, unknown. So I suddenly went from being a kind of individual object with a sort of name branded subject, and now I've kind of reached a certain point of just like staring into the unknown, where you just notice space before stuff happens. And that space is real. Now I don't want to say real like I mean it's a hard argument to say space is real when it's empty in the modern view. In ancient times they saw it. Guys, I've always, since my childhood, kind of like, um, been strangely kind of like unknown eyes move in a known world. Then the known world becomes unknown, and the unknown eyes become known eyes. So Joao Carlos Franco says, "Are you awake?" Um, yeah, but I am getting tired. I might sleep later. No, I know what you mean. Let me tell you, I went. It's not that you are awake. It's like after a point, you just notice that light is instantaneously being. There's literally, it's like in an instant of visual act, in an instant of awareness to sensory perception. It's like, what can I say? Your mind is not a concept. What would you call that when you notice that, experience that? Whatever you call that. I feel I'm, in some sense, I said Socrates, of course, said the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. So that means it's so big that even if we are awake, it's still a tiny lantern compared to all there is. I just feel that I somehow, in my childhood, remembered a memory where that memory was before I had learned language, and it was pretty much me being in a crib. I could just only look through my eyes and see the corner of a room, and it was just a silent moment where it was as if my mind became aware, like it was as if an individual consciousness came from the mind before from communication from others. So I remember the moment before I had learned language pre-thought. So throughout my whole life, I've kind of been going into different things, and the intensity of things has not been that intense. You know? Like nobody knows if it's true if you can giggle your way out of a situation. But I'm telling you, it's like, after some point, you just realize it's every moment is the performance of all the energy that you're left as. After some point, your face is the process of the world. After some point, there's no self to be enlightened. Light was in your eyes and you were in the world. You know? And so it's your participation. So the idea of a sort of metaphysical, like as if there's something going on behind the scenes of this world, which pretty much religion was like the mass general introduction towards a transcendental reality. There's always countercultures. There's always pad oscillations in history. I'm going to say something now, and do you know how many people in history, imagine if my talks last, right? Do you know how many people in history may agree and disagree? Do you know how many people have looked at Socrates and seen him as an old fool, and some people have seen him as a legend that will never be forgotten? We have to open our eyes beyond our eyes, or beyond our subjective outline of our eyes. So that's my answer to are you awake? I feel energy doesn't die. And in other words, energy can't be created or destroyed, it just changes. So I feel that wakefulness has appeared to me as like literally consciousness to energy. And it's like its patterns can echo. That means sometimes you may think some event is your past life, but it's actually an event in your very early childhood that is just having an aftermath echo in future moments of your life. It's, you know what it is? It's like imagine this giant bowling alley, like the bowling place where you throw the bowling ball. Imagine it's giant, and imagine like so many, you throw one ball, and then you throw another ball and another ball, and these are all the applications, these are all the ways your mind as a human being throughout the day has chosen to apply itself to the world, right? There was a point where it was like, let me tell you what happened. It was like, I noticed that in every moment of my life where I thought I was less, was actually a moment in my life where I missed out on a moment of efficiency because my attention was on the inefficient. That's what I'm saying. So that's when you realize, like, as an explorer, you're trying to move beyond the teaching. There's no teacher. There's no teaching. At some point, it's like whatever. You know, we are. Our eyes are open in history and in the trenches of a civilization at the brink of its own loss of nature. Do you know what I mean? Like, cruelty is a sign that, in some sense, more cruelty is welcomed. It's like cause and effect. Anybody who believes in cause and effect, here's the thing. You be more violent, you cause violence. You know? Effect is going to have violent effect. So pretty much, let's take away the evil and good. Let's like ask the superhero and the villain to chill out for a second. You know, like, let me tell you what happened, guys. Imagine the greatest superhero ever, and imagine the greatest supervillain. And the supervillain came to destroy like civilization, and in some sense, the superhero came, and the superhero was like, I'm not gonna let you do that. You know, so the superhero and the supervillain began fighting. And people were like, yeah, beat him, superhero, beat the supervillain, you know? And but then everybody realized for years and years, thousands of years, this superhero and this supervillain are fighting. After some point, people are like, these guys are destroying our infrastructure. You know, like some businessmen are gonna be like, we gotta put a stop to this. And let's say we create some sort of instant ice machine where we freeze them in time in a healthy way. You know? You stop the dualistic pattern. You become a watcher of your world. Then the world starts giving you teachings. It doesn't teach you through words anymore. It doesn't teach you through people. It teaches you through how much you have noticed that your energy is being a conscious event. That means those who realize their mind is moving before their body, those people, in some sense, make less mistakes. Those people who think their body has to move before their mind can, they will never change until something comes and pushes them. So sometimes it's not just about doing the right thing, it's about wondering how evolution is going to be the update on the whole thing. You know? So do not fear the new. It's like your eyes are open to experience it. So guys, I have answered all the questions. People still have time to give questions. If not, I will learn from time and evaporate beyond the mirror. Man, poetry is all guys, I'm telling you, so much of language is geometric. Like, I'm not joking. When people understand this, like, even, I'm pretty sure, like, people in the future, there's going to be eventually some people where they're going to listen to my talks, and conceptually, the images of the concepts are going to have geometrical relevance. Do you know? Because in my inner realms, there's a geometrical layout. What does that mean? That means physical reality is three-dimensional. Okay? Now, it's very easy to fathom geometry two-dimensional. Like, it's like you can imagine a circle on a wall. Easy. Super easy. You know? You can imagine a circle. But you see, when it comes to imagining a sphere, the shadow and the light and all this, there could be certain discrepancies, but you can still visualize a sphere. But when it comes to visualizing something that goes beyond the shape of that sphere, the three dimensions of space, and also the movement of that shape in that space, which would be evoke two dimensions of time. Those two dimensions of time, the time being the additional dimension, if that time could be witnessed, there would be no conception. So beyond the fourth dimension, literally we cannot speak about it because it is too empty or too infinitely instantaneous. It's like we're so eternal that we appear temporary. You know? We're so it's like, hey man, how was life? He's like, it was short. He's like, but how could it be short, you know, when you're eternal being? And you're like, I don't know, man. Sometimes you do what you got. Oh man. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I think there's no more questions. I think everybody has, in some sense. That emptiness doesn't deviate too far from the emptiness that Buddha speaks about, Zhao. The emptiness Buddha speaks about is, in some sense, how like two people can look at like a cup of tea, and one of them's gonna be like, that's like hot tea. One of them's gonna be like, that's warm tea, and nobody would know. You know what I mean? So in some sense, it's like the object is empty. Your attention imbues it life. Just like a child plays with a toy, they become like a teddy bear. So when you even look at human psychological courtship, the human beings play with each other psychologically, of course, through speech, through how would I say it? It's like the same thing that allows a 8-year-old child to play with a teddy bear or whatever and see that teddy bear as a living human being. It's that same kind of rawness that when it comes to human courtship and communication is really what you are. Do you know? That means it's kind of like the person being like, yo, how can I expect others to be okay with me if I'm not okay with me? Do you know? So that's the thing. It's like we've been conditioned in seeing the less when the more was always there. Novelty is the most powerful force. It is what will push us towards the language threshold. That means Terence McKenna spoke about the transcendental object at the end of time. Mr.Within is going to say the concept of the language threshold even parallels Terence's dimension, where I would say the event horizon of that transcendental object at the end of time is the language threshold. That means when you look at the Big Bang, it was like bang! You know? It was like bang! You know, suddenly a cosmos came, and through a very short moment of cosmic inflation, you know, in like less than a second, manifestation popped out as if the designs were like it was a Jack in the Box of Universal. It's like a galaxy was like, you know what it is? It's honestly like evolution is how like a cosmos was shot out of a cannon at like a seed first, then into what it stretched out to be, you know. The language threshold, that means at some point, experience is so raw that it's not even linguistic. That's why you see comedians, when you see these stand-up comedians, like sometimes when I have time on the side, I look at stand-up comedians. I'm like, all right, let's see what human beings feel is like humor. Do you know? And you know what I noticed? I noticed that the comedian is so looking at what they feel the audience wants to see, that they're not realizing if every person is a new go at the stage. You see what I mean? You have to separate yourself from the inefficient and immediately find an allegiance with the efficient. And the efficient doesn't mean morally inefficient, externally efficient. After some point, just breathe the air of your world and realize life matters more than the ideas on matter. So anyways, guys, I'm going to thank everybody for listening. How long was this talk? 2 hours, 33 minutes. All right. What can you do, you know? Time passes by when you're questioning time's existence. Time flies by when you wonder if time exists. You know? So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.